The twin suns burned high in the alien sky, turning the desert into a sea of white fire. Heat waves twisted the horizon like boiling water. Every step on the sand felt like stepping on hot iron. It was a place made to kill the weak. Captain Elena. Ward stood at the edge of the dunes, her boots sinking in golden dust. She had no weapon, no water, and no shade. The only thing she had was her own body, and the stares of the alien cadets who surrounded her in a wide circle. They wore sleek survival suits that shimmered under the light, each suit packed with cooling systems, oxygen filters, and nutrition. Injectors. Their alien skin blue, green, and silver tones gleamed under the sun. They were strong, tall, and proud. Soldiers from advanced species. And then there was Elena, a human. No armor, no high-tech gear. Just a simple black uniform and bare hands. Look at her, one cadet laughed, his sharp teeth glinting in the sun. No claws, no scales, no energy core. She will last 1 hour before her blood boils. Another hissed in amusement. 1 hour? I give her 30 minutes. They all laughed. Elena didn't answer. She just stared at the desert. Her lips were dry. Her throat burned. Sweat rolled down her back, but her eyes stayed calm. Cadets, barked Commander Caver, a towering figure with 4 arms and obsidian. Armor. His voice was deep like a drum. This is your survival test. 3 days. No weapons, no help, no signals. Your only task is to survive. The one who lasts wins respect. The one who fails dies. The aliens nodded proudly. Survival was in their blood, but when the commander turned his eyes to Elena, his expression hardened. And you, human, why are you here? Elena raised her chin. Orders, same as you. Caver laughed, and the cadets joined him. Orders? You should have stayed on your fragile world. This place will eat you alive. Elena said nothing. She just smiled a little. It wasn't a warm smile, it was a promise. The commander roared, and the desert swallowed his voice. Begin. The cadets scattered fast, their bodies leaping across the dunes with alien grace. Some used claws to dig into the sand for shade. Others sprinted toward the distant stone ridges for cover. In seconds, the desert was empty except for Elena. She stood alone under the suns, the heat hammering down like a burning fist. Her heartbeat slowed. She remembered the training back on Earth, the harsh voice of her survival instructor. Don't fight the desert. Understand it. Use it. Elena knelt and touched the sand. It was burning hot, but soft, dry, silica-rich. She looked at the horizon. No water, no trees, just endless dunes. She would not survive by brute strength. She needed fire, heat control, and shelter, but first she needed to move. She walked slowly, following the shape of the dunes. Her boots sank deeper, making each step harder. Sweat dripped into her eyes, stinging like acid, and then she heard laughter. She turned. A group of cadets stood on a ridge, their tall bodies casting long shadows. They had found her, one of them. A reptilian alien with shimmering green scales pointed at her empty hands and mocked. Where is your weapon, human? Where is your magic fire stick? Did you forget your toys? Another grinned, his blue skin glowing faintly. Maybe she wants to die fast. Should we help her? They all laughed again, their voices sharp in the dry air. Elena looked at them calmly. Her lips were cracked, but her voice was steady. Keep laughing, she said softly, because when you stop, it will be too late. The cadets froze for a second, surprised by her tone. And they sneered and turned away, their laughter echoing across the dunes. Elena watched them go, then whispered to herself, Let's show them what human weakness can do. She dropped to her knees and dug her hands into the sand. It burned her skin, but she didn't stop. She piled the sand in a circle, thinking of the ember she would need. She scanned the ground, searching for the right stones. Silica and metal. Traces. She knew the desert was hiding them. The suns crawled across the sky, shadows stretching long. Her fingers bled, but she kept digging. When the first alien night came, the temperature would fall like a blade. They would freeze without heat. Their fancy suits wouldn't last forever. Elena smiled through cracked lips, her hands raw with blood and dust. She whispered one last promise into the empty desert. They think I'm weak. They have no idea what fire feels like. Asterisk, when the twin suns died behind the horizon, silence fell like a blade. Heat vanished. The burning sand turned to ice. The aliens thought they were ready. They were wrong. The day had been merciless, but the night was worse. The desert glowed silver under two pale moons, and the temperature crashed faster than any. Earth-winter storm. Sand that burned her hands hours ago now stung like frozen steel. Elena crouched in the shadow of a dune, arms wrapped tight around her chest. Her breath fogged the air. Her skin ached. Her body shivered hard enough to hurt Dot. She had survived the heat. Now she had to fight the cold. Not far away, alien cadets huddled inside thermal bubbles, their survival tech shimmering with blue light. From the dark, their laughter reached her like ghosts. "Where's your warmth now, human?" one mocked. "Your flesh will freeze before dawn." Another voice hissed, "She will not last the night." They were right, if she did nothing. But Elena had no intention of dying on this cursed world. She crawled across the sand, fingers numb, searching for the stones she had hidden earlier. Her bloody hands brushed rough surfaces, sharp, metallic traces under the dunes. Good. The desert wasn't just sand. It was minerals, and minerals meant hope. She pulled two dark stones into the moonlight. They were heavy, gritty, with a hint of iron. Her training echoed in her mind. Friction, pressure, spark. Fire does not care about technology. It only obeys will. Her body trembled violently, but she forced her muscles to obey. She struck the stones together. Once, twice, 10 times. No spark. Her teeth clenched. Behind her, alien laughter rose again. "She's trying to fight the night with rocks," one sneered. Elena ignored them. Her lips were blue now. Her heartbeat slowed. She knew the numbers 1 hour before frostbite, 2 before unconsciousness, 3 before death. She hit the stones harder. A faint crack, a flash of light tiny, like a dying star. Then darkness, but it was something. She dragged a fistful of sand closer, mixing it with dry cloth torn from her own uniform. Her fingers shook as she pressed the spark into the fibers. Nothing. "Burn, damn you," she whispered, voice hoarse. Again, strike, strike, sparks flew, weak but real. A thread of smoke curled in the cold air. Her heart kicked hard. She bent low, cupped the ember like it was life itself, and blew. Soft, gentle, careful. The smoke thickened. A glow came alive like an angry eye, and then fire bloomed. Small, fragile, but warm. A newborn sun in the frozen desert night. Breath came fast now. She fed the flame with scraps, even her torn sleeve. The fire grew, licking the air, painting gold across her dirt-streaked face. For the first time since dawn, she felt heat. The laughter stopped. In the distance, alien eyes glowed in the dark. They stared at the impossible sight. A human, bare-handed, calling fire out of sand and stone. They whispered among themselves, voices sharp with disbelief. Fire? From nothing? She made it? Without tech? This is forbiddens. Primitive. Dangerous. But their thermal bubbles were failing. Their suits flickered with warning lights. The cold was eating them alive. One cadet, a young female with pale silver skin, stepped forward. Her voice shook, Not from pride, but from fear. Human, please. Let us share your warmth. Elena looked at her through the wavering glow of the fire. For a long second, she said nothing. Then she smiled, a tired, hard smile. Mock me again. She whispered, and I'll let the desert have you. The cadet lowered her head in shame. Others followed, crawling closer like predators turned beggars. Their eyes reflected the flames, wide with something more than fear-respect. Elena sat silent, feeding her small fire, the heat kissing her raw hands. Her body hurt everywhere, but inside her chest burned something stronger than flame. Defiance. She looked at the moons and spoke softly, almost to herself. Humans don't die easy. Remember that. Far away, Commander Caver watched through the night, his massive arms crossed. The firelight danced in his dark eyes, and for the first time, he felt something he had never felt for a human before. Unease. This was not weakness. This was something far more dangerous. Asterisk the ember had become a flame. For the aliens, it was only heat. For Elena, it was a weapon. And now, the desert itself would obey her. The night fire still burned, small but fierce, like a living thing. Its light pushed back the endless dark, painting gold shadows across Elena's face. The alien cadets sat in a rough circle, their proud eyes lowered. None spoke. They only watched her, the human who did the impossible. Elena felt their stares. But she didn't care. Her mind was on the next step. Fire alone would not keep her alive. She needed water. She needed tools. She needed more than survival. She needed control. Her fingers brushed the sand, still cold, but glittering faintly in the firelight. Silica rich. Perfect. She smiled through cracked lips. Heat changes matter, she thought. Glass is born from fire. She stood slowly, legs stiff with exhaustion. The aliens tensed, as if expecting an attack. Elena ignored them. She grabbed a flat stone and began digging a shallow pit in the sand near the flames. The cadets whispered nervously. What is she doing? Now, maybe a burial pit? No. Look. When the hole was ready, she lined it with the darkest sand she could find. Her hands were bleeding, but she didn't stop. She piled smaller stones on the edge and fed the fire with scraps until it roared higher. The heat licked her face, burning. Like a promise, one alien finally spoke, his voice trembling. Why are you feeding it so much? Elena's eyes flicked toward him, sharp as a blade. Because fire is hungry, she said simply. And I want it strong. They fell silent again. Hours crawled by. The night deepened. The flames grew. Hotter, wilder. Sparks leapt into the sky like tiny stars. The sand in the pit began to glow faintly red, then white, then almost liquid under the relentless heat. The aliens stared in stunned silence. She's melting the ground. Is this human magic? No. It was science. Earth science. Primitive to them? Maybe, but real. And Deadly Elena leaned closer, sweat dripping into the fire, steam hissing in reply. She tore another strip from her uniform and wrapped it around a stone shard, shaping it into a crude grip. When the molten sand hardened into glassy lumps, she lifted one with the improvised tool and cooled it in the freezing air. A jagged, translucent blade gleamed in her bloody hand, sharp, strong. The aliens froze. Their eyes widened. One of them whispered what all were thinking. She made a weapon. Alana held the glass blade high, the firelight dancing along its edges. For a moment, she looked like something out of their darkest legends, a creature of heat and rage, bending the desert to her will. Still think I'm weak? She asked softly. No one answered. She worked in silence, forging more shards, shaping them with patience born from desperation. Her breath smoked in the night air. her muscles screaming, but she didn't stop. Each blade was a promise, a warning. When she finally rested, a small arsenal of glass weapons lay beside her: knives, jagged spikes, even a crude spearhead. She had no metal, no tech, but she had something better: fire and will. The aliens could only stare. They had mocked her for empty hands. Now those same hands had created what their tech could not: tools in a dead desert. Slowly, one of them, the young silver-skinned female from the fore, crawled closer, her pride broken. She bowed her head low and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Human, teach us." Helena looked at her, then at the others. Their faces were masks of fear and awe. She could see it now, the shift. Hours ago, they laughed. Now they waited for her command, and that was power dot. She fed the fire one last time and sat down, staring into the flames. The glass blade rested across her knees. In its reflection, her own face looked like a stranger's: hard, fierce, unstoppable. She spoke without looking at them. "You thought humans were weak because we don't have claws, scales, or your shiny toys. But humans adapt. We take what kills us and turn it into a weapon. That's why we survive." Silence. Then, softly, like wind over sand, the aliens whispered a new word for her, one that would echo long after this trial was done. "Firemaker." Helena didn't smile. Not yet. Because this was only the beginning. The desert had more tests. And she was ready to burn through all of them. Dot above, the twin moons hung like watchful eyes. And far beyond, Commander Caver tightened his grip on his weapon, unease crawling through his veins. He had seen soldiers. He had seen killers. But this was something else. Dot, a human, alone, making fire from dust. What would she make next? Asterisk. By dawn, the desert was silent. No laughter, no mocking, only the sound of empty stomachs and fear. The aliens thought the humans' fire was a trick. Then they saw her kill the desert. The twin suns rose like burning eyes, chasing the cold away with merciless heat. The desert, white under the morning glare, seemed endless again. Shadows vanished. Air shimmered like boiling glass. The alien cadets stirred weakly around the fire pit. Their survival suits were blinking red: low power, low reserves. They had been trained for battle, not for hunger. Helena sat apart, cross-legged, her eyes fixed on the dunes. Her glass blade rested on her thigh, sharp and gleaming like a frozen flame. She had slept for less than an hour, yet she looked calm, focused. The fire had burned low. The night had been hers, but the day belonged to hunger. By midday, the aliens' rations were gone. They had counted on their tech to feed them, but the energy packs had drained faster than expected. The devices that once turned desert air into liquid meals now flickered and died. The strongest cadet, a reptilian male with green-scaled arms, snarled in frustration. He kicked his empty pack, his voice harsh. "This is impossible. There is nothing here. No food, no life." Helena didn't move. She only said softly, "You're wrong." The cadets turned to her, eyes hollow with disbelief. "What did you say, human?" One spat. Helena stood slowly, her body stiff but her grip steady on the glass blade. She pointed toward the dunes. "The desert is alive. You just don't know how to listen." They stared as she walked away, the sand swallowing her steps. For hours, they watched from the shade of a dune as she moved with strange patience, bending low, tracing lines in the sand, pausing, waiting. She dragged a stick across the ground, making loops and marks like a hunter mapping unseen paths. One cadet muttered, "She's lost her mind." Another shook his head. "No, she's searching." And then they saw it. Helena dropped to her knees, her fingers sinking into loose sand. She dug fast, ignoring the heat biting her skin. Sand flew. Then a flash of movement. A creature burst out, hissing, its body sleek and scaled like a desert serpent, claws thrashing. Its jaws snapped toward her hand, but the glass blade moved. Faster. A single clean strike. The creature fell silent. The aliens froze. She held the kill high, a desert lizard the length of her arm, its blood steaming in the heat. When she walked back, her face was calm. Her voice was harder than steel. Still think there's no life here? They said nothing. Hunger had stolen their pride. Their stomachs knotted as the smell of roasting flesh soon drifted from the fire pit. Elena had skinned the creature with precision, spitted it over the flames, and turned it slowly, letting the fat crackle and drip. The aliens stared, their throats dry, their stomachs growling loud enough to hear. Some looked away, ashamed. Others watched every turn of the meat like predators. Finally, she spoke. "You want to eat?" No one answered at first. Then the silver-skinned female stepped forward, her voice low. "Yes." Elena looked at her, then at the others. "You all mocked me yesterday, called me weak, useless." Their eyes dropped. No one denied it. Elena's tone didn't soften. "Humans survive because we don't quit. We adapt. We fight with nothing until nothing becomes enough." She sliced the meat, steam rising from the tender flesh. She handed the first piece to the silver-skinned cadet, the only one who had shown humility the night before. The alien took it with trembling hands and whispered, "Thank you, Firemaker." The name spread again, like a spark catching dry. Leaves, Fire-Maker. One by one, they came forward. Even the proud reptilian male, his head bowed in silence, accepted his share. Hunger broke pride, and in its place grew something else. Respect. Fear. When the meat was gone, the silence returned, but it was not the same silence. It was heavier. The air seemed to hum around Elena as she sat by the flames, her glass blade across her knees. They had seen fire. They had tasted food from her hand. In one night and one morning, the human they mocked had become their lifeline. Far away, Commander Caver watched through the shimmering heat from a ridge, his 4 arms folded. His black eyes burned with unease. "They follow her now," he muttered. "Not me." One of his lieutenants hissed, "Should we intervene?" Caver's jaw tightened. "No, let it play out. I want to see what else she can do." Because deep inside, the commander felt it a fear he had never felt for any human before. A fear that tasted like prophecy. If one human could do this, what would an army do? Elena gazed at the horizon, her thoughts sharp as the glass blade. In her lap, this was more than survival now. This was a war of respect. And she had no intention of losing. Asterisk, the first warning was not sound. It was silence. A silence so deep it crushed the breath from their lungs. Then the horizon moved. And death came riding on the wind. The desert was calm. Too calm, thought the alien. Cadets sat in the weak shade of a stone ridge, their faces hollow but alive. They owed that to Elena. Fire had given them heat. Her hunt had given them food. But as noon burned above, the air changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in the wind, a ripple across the dunes, like something vast crawling under the sand. Then the sky darkened, though no clouds mooned above. Elena felt it before the aliens did, a prickle along her spine. The same feeling she'd had once on Earth, before a tornado hit a pressure, a silence that screamed. She stood fast, scanning the horizon, and then she saw it, a line, thin at first, then growing, rising like a wall of shadow. A storm, but not like any storm she had known. The wind carried glitter, millions of sharp, bright fragments riding the air like knives. Her breath caught, not sand, glassed out the heat of twin suns fused the upper dunes into brittle plates. Now the wind would shatter them and fling them like blades. A glass storm. Asterisk. The aliens saw it next, and panic struck like lightning. "Storm," one shouted, his voice cracking. "Run," another howled. They scrambled for cover, but there was none. The open desert stretched for miles. Their failing suits offered no protection against razors of glass. Elena's voice cut through the chaos like a whip. "Stop running. You can't outrun this." They froze, wild-eyed. The storm towered now, its edge glinting like a moving sea of broken stars. The wind howled with a sound like screaming metal. Elena grabbed the silver-skinned cadet by the arm. "Help me." What?" "Get rocks. Big ones. Move." They obeyed. Panic turned to desperate action as Elena dragged stones into a rough circle. Her hands bled again, skin peeling, but she didn't stop. She dug with her bare fingers, scooping a pit in the sand inside the ring. The others followed her orders without question now. Fear had burned away their arrogance. They stacked rocks. They built a wall. Helena shouted over the rising wind, "Fire feed! Every scrap you have." The cadets threw in cloth, broken gear, anything that burned. The flames leapt high, roaring against the darkening sky. The first shards struck then thin, whistling, deadly. One slashed across an alien's arm, cutting through armor like paper. Blood sprayed black on the sand. He screamed, "Down!" Elena roared, "In the pit, now!" They dove into the shallow trench as the storm hit like a living thing. The wind became a monster's roar. Blades of glass screamed through the air, slicing rock, tearing dunes apart. The world turned white with flying death. The aliens cowered under the wall of stones, clutching each other, their pride shattered. Glass shards hammered the barricade, slicing deep gouges into the stone. Elena crouched low, arms over her head. Teeth clenched as shards tore the sky above. Heat from the fire washed over them, turning the pit into a fragile bubble of life. Minutes felt like hours. The sound was endless howls, shrieks, crashes. The storm was rage made solid dot, and then silence. When they crawled out, the world was changed. The desert was a graveyard of glittering shards, dunes carved into alien sculptures. The sky was a pale wound above Dot. The cadets stared at the destruction in stunned silence. Then they turned to Elena. She stood at the edge of the pit, blood streaking. Her arms, her glass blade still at her side. Her eyes burned like twin coals. "You're alive because of me," she said simply. "Remember that." They did. Oh, they did. The reptilian male, once her loudest mocker, dropped to one knee. His scaled head bowed low. "We mocked you, called you weak. We were fools. You are more than warrior. You are leader." Others followed, kneeling in the hill, glittering sand. Their voices rose in one name, half whisper, half prayer, Firemaker. Far on a ridge, Commander Caver watched again. His armor gleamed with shards of glass, his massive hands gripping the rail. His second-in-command spoke, voice low and tight. "She commands them now." Caver said nothing. His jaw was stone. His black eyes stayed on the human, standing like a figure of myth amid the shattered desert. Finally, he whispered, as if fearing, the truth of his own words. "She is not prey. She is not soldier. She is fire." And in his gut, a thought burned like a brand. If one human can do this, what would an army of them unleash? As night bled across the sky again, Elena sat by, her fire staring at the dunes that glittered like broken stars. Her body ached. Her hands throbbed. But inside her chest burned something fierce and unstoppable. This wasn't survival anymore. This was domination. and the galaxy had no idea what kind of storm a human could be. Asterisk, the storm was gone, but something darker was coming pride. It walked on 4 arms, armored in black, carrying a blade longer than Elena's body. And it spoke one word: fight. The desert glittered under the twin suns, its surface scarred by the storm. Shards of glass caught the light, turning dunes into fields of broken stars. Elena stood by the fire pit, sharpening her glass blade against a stone. Every stroke hissed like a whisper of warning. Behind her, the alien cadets moved in silence. Mocking laughter now, no arrogant grins. They followed her commands without question. For 2 days, they had lived because of her. Fire, shelter. Even through the glass storm, she had led them. And now, in their eyes, she was not weak. She was something else, but not everyone agreed. A shadow fell across the camp. Heavy steps shook the sand. When Elena looked up, her blood chilled. Commander KVOR. The alien warlord towered above them, 4 arms thick with muscle, obsidian armor shining with glass shards. His face was carved from stone, his black eyes like pits. In his upper hands, he carried a blade of alien steel long as a spear, edges like death. The cadets dropped to their knees, heads bowed. No one dared breathe. Kyver's voice rolled like thunder. Human. Elena stood slowly, her hand resting on the glass blade she had forged from sand. Her heart thudded, but her eyes never left his. Yes? Kaver stepped closer, the ground, trembling under his weight. His lower arms crossed over his chest, his upper arms lowering the blade until its tip carved a line in the sand between them. You have turned my soldiers into followers. You have taken my trial and made it yours. And now you will face me. The wind hissed across the dunes. Elena's lips tightened. Face you how? Kaver's grin was a predator's. Fight. No weapons of your earth. No tricks. Just you and me. Gasps rippled through the cadets. One dared to speak. Commander, this is silence, Kaver roared. His eyes bored into Elena. If you win, you lead them. If you lose, you die. Do you accept? Every instinct screamed to refuse. He was a monster. A tank of flesh and steel. One strike from those arms would break her like glass. But something hotter than fear burned in her chest defiance. I accept, she said softly. The cadets whispered her name. Firemaker. The circle formed in silence. Glass shards crunched. Underfoot. The fire pit smoked behind Elena like a waiting witness. Kavaror threw down his massive blade and cracked his fists. His voice boomed. No death by weapon. Hands only. Let the desert judge. Elena nodded. She dropped her glass blade into the sand. Her fingers curled into fists. Her breath slowed. She wasn't the strongest. She wasn't the fastest. But she was human, and humans didn't play by the enemy's rules. The fight began with a roar. Kyver lunged, his 4 arms a blur, striking like hammers. Elena rolled aside, sand exploding under his blows. His fists hit the ground hard enough to crack stone. She dodged, weaving like a shadow, her body screaming with each narrow escape. She couldn't match his power. One hit, and she was dead. She needed to think. Fast Dot used the desert. Her mind whispered. Use what they can't see, Dot. She fainted left, then sprinted toward the fire pit. Kaver charged after her, laughing like a beast. Elena snatched a burning log from the pit and hurled it into the sand at his feet. Sparks flew, blinding him for a second. That was all she needed. She dove, grabbed a shard of glass hidden near the pit, and rammed it into the ground, not at him, but beneath him. Kyver stomped forward, his weight slamming the sand right where she had buried the shard. The glass shattered under his foot, slicing deep into the tendons of his lower limb. He roared, staggering. Elena moved like lightning. She scooped a handful of sand, flung it into his eyes, then kicked his wounded leg with everything she had. The giant toppled with a crash that shook the dunes. Before he could rise, she was on his chest, pressing the burning log against his throat. The heat kissed his armored skin. Smoke curled. The cadets froze, breathless. Elena's voice cut the silence like steel. "This is the truth," she said, her eyes blazing into Caver's. "Humans don't win by strength. We win because we adapt, because we use what you ignore. That is power." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Caver's massive arms went limp. His voice came out low, like grinding stone. "You win." Gasps rippled through. The cadets, then cheers. Wild, deafening cheers. They pounded their fists into the sand, their voices rising in one name. "Firemaker! Firemaker!" Elena stepped back as Caver rose slowly, towering still, but no longer in defiance. He bowed his massive head, a gesture no cadet had ever seen. "You," he said, his voice like a vow, "are no prey. You are no soldier. You are commander." And deep in his dark eyes burned something new fear, wrapped in respect. Dot above them, the suns bled red across the horizon. And Elena knew this wasn't the end. This was the spark before the inferno. Asterisk, when the rescue ships broke through the clouds. They didn't find survivors. They found a legend. A circle of kneeling warriors. And in the center, a human sitting by fire, with eyes like storms. The sky burned crimson as twin suns bled into the horizon. Shadows stretched long across the shattered desert, glittering with shards from the glass storm. Elena sat cross-legged by the fire, her hands raw, her uniform torn to rags. The glass blade lay across her lap. Behind her, the cadets stood like statues, silent, waiting, loyal. For 3 days they had survived because of her. Not because of strength, not because of technology, but because a human refused to break. Above, a distant hum thickened the air. Engines. The cadets turned their eyes to the sky. Black specks grew larger, cutting through the twilight. Rescue ships. Finally, for a moment, relief flickered in their alien eyes. Then doubt, fear, because when those ships landed, what would happen to the one who had led them? Elena didn't move. She watched the ships descend in clouds of fire and dust. Her face was calm, but her mind was a storm. She had fought nature. She had fought hunger. She had fought pride and won. But this next battle would not be with fists or glass. It would be with truth. The landing gear crushed the dunes. Engines roared. Dust storms spiraled around sleek black holes, marked with the sigils of the Galactic Command. Armored officers emerged first, weapons at their sides, scanning the survivors with cold precision. Their eyes swept across the cadets, noting injuries, torn suits, and then froze on the human. She was not cowering, not begging. She was sitting like a queen by her throne of fire, a blade of glass gleaming across her knees. One officer hissed, under his breath, "Impossible." And then Commander Caver stepped forward. His towering frame cast a long shadow over the sand. His armor was cracked. His skin bore scars from glass and battle. He walked slowly, deliberately, until he stood beside Elena. For a long breath, the desert held its silence. Then he knelt. 4 massive arms, folding into the sand. Head bowed low. The officers froze, their black eyes wide. A sound escaped, one shock, like a gasp tearing free. And then the cadets followed, one by one, kneeling, bowing their heads too. The human who had turned fire and dust into life. Elena rose slowly, the glass blade catching the dying light like a shard of a fallen star. Her voice was soft, but it carried like thunder. You sent me here to prove weakness, she said. You called humans fragile, helpless, prey. Her eyes swept across the officers like a blade drawn in silence. Look around you. Who survived? Who led? Who turned your death world into a weapon? No one spoke. The fire cracked, its sparks leaping into the blood-red sky like tiny comets. Elena's voice hardened. Remember this. Humanity doesn't die easy. You can strip us of tools, of tech, of safety. But you will never strip us of this. She raised the glass blade high, its edge blazing in the sunset. Our will to fight. Our will to adapt. Our will to win. The officers exchanged glances. One muttered into his comms, voice trembling. Command, we have a situation. The cadets, they... He stopped, as if words could not carry the weight of what they saw, because this was not just survival. It was something greater. A spark lit in the desert that would burn across the stars. The name rose again from alien throats, first a whisper, then a roar. Firemaker! Firemaker! The dunes shook with their voices. The sky seemed to echo it, and in that moment, Alana Ward knew the truth. This wasn't the end of a trial. This was the beginning of a legend. When the ships lifted off hours later, carrying the survivors back to the heart of the galaxy, rumors flew faster than light. About a human who fought storms and hunger with bare hands, who bent the desert to her will, who made fire from dust and fear from pride. They would call her many things: survivor, warrior, commander. But one name would burn brightest, the human flame, and in the silent halls of power, where alien rulers once scoffed at Earth as a fragile world, a new fear whispered like smoke. If one human could do this, what would an army of them do? The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The end asterisk.